Hello everyone, and welcome back to our mini-series where we discuss valuations within the recruitment and staffing sector. In our last video, we touched upon the difference in valuations achieved for those businesses that are niche specialist staffing providers versus those that are more generalist. In today's video, we're going to be discussing whether or not having an international footprint can affect the valuations that are achieved.
Yeah, I think it's another important area that recruitment businesses particularly have had a bit of a focus on. I think what we saw was a trend coming after Brexit of businesses looking at shoring up if they had any operations into Europe, making sure they suddenly had a presence on the continent just in case of legislative changes. And that was partly sector specific, so some contractor businesses, that was more of an urgent need to get that in place. For other businesses, it was more about being close to their clients and just being ready for regulation changes. I think the broader trend and what we're seeing definitely coming back again is that looking across the pond now to the US, because it's just such a big market. The economy is much bigger than ours. It's really well culturally aligned in many ways around the sectors that are big in the US versus where we've got specialisms as well. And I think what recruitment businesses see is that they can achieve good margins over there. It's a big market to tap, and if they can break in, they can do really well and make good earnings. And then ultimately, evaluations earnings times a multiple. If you can make your earnings bigger and better, that's great. But actually, if you've got the international presence, it de-risks you. You've now got two economies, or three if you've got Europe as well. De-risks you. You might be able to get a bit of a better multiple. But I know you work with US buyers.
Yeah, I think it does definitely make you more attractive having that international footprint. With the UK recruitment agencies that we've spoken to over the last 3-4 years, there has definitely been a real trend for those trying to penetrate the US market. Unfortunately, if you look at the UK recruitment market, it is very saturated. There are many recruitment staffing firms, but if you look at the size of the US, and as you touched upon, the economy out there, how big it is and how vast it is, there actually aren't that many staffing and recruitment players. So there is a real big opportunity, and I think if you were to diversify your earnings and where the revenue is actually generated, having a mix of UK, Europe and the US, I think that opens you up to being attractive to US buyers.
Yeah, and I think it can also help where if you're a recruitment business that has large blue chip clients, they're going to have those footprints, and we even see this with the Far East with recruitment businesses. If you've got large blue chip clients, you can follow them around, you've got a bit more certainty on earnings, you can offer a broader service. I think it can be really valuable for those businesses. I think the key area though is making sure you are specialist in what you do. So this isn't the same thing as specialist sector versus generalist. It's, if you're really, really good in the UK, you've got a better chance of being really good in the US. I don't think a bad recruitment business can suddenly do well in the US by fluke. I think it's a harder market to crack because it is competitive. It's not just UK businesses looking to go over there. The whole world's looking to operate in the US because it's the biggest economy, and therefore you have to be brilliant at what you do to crack that market. So I think you can't lose sight of doing what you do really well before you try and make it over to the US.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just touching upon some recent transactions that we've seen of international buyers looking at the UK market, over the last, say, 6 months, there are a couple of large ones. Headquartered in Europe, they acquired Impellum, a well-known UK recruitment brand. But also in addition to that, we looked at AYA Healthcare, a US buyer looking to enter the UK healthcare market via the acquisition of ID Medical. I think those factors are bringing confidence back into the UK market for buyers that are based overseas.
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing not to lose sight of is at the moment, and it's been the case for at least 2-3 years, I don't want to necessarily touch on the mini budget for too long, but with the currency differential, US money has been coming into the UK making acquisitions across a lot of sectors. Recruitment is not alone in that, and it's a US buyer with US currency and US operations buying a UK business is at an advantage because they have generally more cash available than a UK buyer, or at least they're trading at an effective discount because of currency differences. So we've certainly seen that.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is around that US buyers looking at UK businesses. Do you think there's much of a difference in what people you're speaking to look at in terms of a UK business that has US operations? Is that more attractive to a US buyer because they've already got both?
I think, as you were saying, over the last few years, there may have not been that much interest from international buyers into the UK, but hopefully the tide has started to turn. I guess for those staffing agencies that may be headquartered in the UK, for them to be more attractive to US buyers, it would be better for them to have a lot of their revenue being generated over in the US. I think that just gives the buyer reassurance in terms of the margins that are being able to be achieved. If you look at the US recruitment market, the margins that they're able to make out there are a lot bigger than the UK. And I guess the middle ground of that is if you look at the German and you look at the Netherlands staffing market, where the GM is slightly better than the UK market.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think also another question I was going to ask you, but is around that culture piece, which is that for us, no matter what the transaction is, culture is so important. Is there a cultural fit? Because you can look at the valuation, you can look at the cold hard numbers, and it can all seem to work out, but culture is important. I think cross-border culture is even more important because you've not just got two different businesses' cultures, you've now got two different cultures.
Yeah.
And do you see that with, do you think that's one of the factors as to why a UK business with US operations, do you think that makes that an easier integration?
Yeah, I think just going back to culture as a whole, I think that is very much overlooked when looking at transactions. I guess when we work with the buy-side clients that we are proactively looking for businesses for, on paper and operationally a business may look great. However, once we introduce those businesses, if there is no cultural alignment, those conversations aren't going to continue any further. However, if there is cultural alignment, what that would give to the buyer is reassurance that that business is probably going to be a good fit, and therefore the people, which within staffing and recruitment, that is effectively what you are acquiring, those people are going to remain. And that's what you want in any transaction, and to mitigate that risk.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and I think that's why good advice and people that have seen it before is important, because that can help with those soft factors. It's not just cold hard numbers anymore.
Yeah, exactly that. But no, I think we discussed some really good points there, Seb, and thanks for joining us for that mini video where we discussed the effect on valuations of having an international footprint.